the way right up to here because this is all the pre-chat. Welcome, everybody. So glad to hear you. So glad to have you here. And before we dive into our main thing, hey, Brian Watson, who is one of our co-writing hosts, will you just let us know, because we have this wonderful free co-writing that's open to everyone 5 days a week. Brian, tell us what the format of this co-writing is.
Sure, and I'll rename myself once I finish. I forgot, I didn't realize I still am co-writing host. So, what we do is we come together at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, 12:30 p.m. Eastern time, and we just do a quick run around, say where we're calling in from, what we're working on, and then we go for about 75 minutes. At 10 of 11 Pacific time, 10 of 2 Eastern time, I give a little warning, or the host gives a little warning, and then at 5 of the hour, we come back together, say what we've got done, and bless it and release it, and go on into the day.
And it is a wonderful time. You do not need to RSVP. You do not need to register. It is okay to come in late. It is okay to leave early. It is okay to keep your camera off the whole time. If you are a shy, non-camera person, I like to keep mine on for accountability because it keeps me like sitting right there at the computer. But it is stunningly productive, and I highly recommend joining it. We include the links in every Writer's Bridge email that you get. They are also on all of my social media in that link tree. If you're just joining us, please do drop into the chat where you are coming from, what you are currently working on. And yes, I will drop my Linktree link into the chat when we get a moment to do that. So welcome to the Writer's Bridge, everybody. Today, we are talking about unconventional book parties and partnerships. Both of our guests have been part of the Writer's Bridge community from our very first meeting, and we have seen their books grow as they have built platform and brought their works into the world. But before we dive in, as per usual, let me let you know what's coming up with Craft Talks. Super excited to say I am teaching a workshop March 19th called Flash Draft Your Book, Using Dramatic Structure to Know Where You're Going and How to Get There. And it is a 2-hour session with 20 minutes of writing time in the middle and some live editing. We also, if you are considering the Queen Mary cruise, we have 5 cabins left. And so if you would like to join us on the Queen Mary across the Atlantic with me, Dinty W. Moore, literary agent Amy Collins, and publishing expert Jane Friedman, now is the time to act. And I will also drop that link into the chat as well. Let me first introduce our guests. So Mimi Zeman has treated frozen limbs on the highest mountain, delivered triplets near the deepest ocean trench, tap danced through Broadway studios, and been a suburban mother of 3, all experiences that have prepared her for the challenges of writing. Her latest is an award-winning memoir, Tap Dancing on Everest, about the risks we take to become our truest selves. Casey Mulligan Walsh writes about life at the intersection of grief and joy. And Casey's work has appeared in the New York Times, HuffPost, Next Avenue, Modern Loss, Hippocampus, and many, many more. She's been nominated for Best of the Net. She is the founding editor of In a Flash literary magazine, and she serves as an ambassador and on the board of the Family Heart Foundation, raising awareness of the genetic lipid disorder that has affected her family across generations. Now, both our guests have recent memoirs in the world. Mimi's Tap Dancing on Everest, a young doctor's unlikely adventure, came out from Globe Pequot Falcon Guides in April of last year. And Casey's memoir, The Full Catastrophe, All I Ever Wanted, Everything I Feared, came out from Motina Books on February 18th last week. So welcome, Casey and Mimi. So glad to have you here. Now, long before you launched, you both started thinking about how to promote and how to share your books. Mimi, how did you build your platform? Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thanks, Allison. And I have to say, both Casey and I are Allison groupies, so this is the hugest thrill. We were at the first Writer's Bridge. We've taken Allison workshops in person, online. So thank you for having us. Because you taught us not to freak out about not having big social media followers, which is me, I don't have much. I have had to rely on other partnerships, my medical background, my advocacy and reproductive rights, being a Jewish author, which opened doors with the Jewish Book Council, and other things. We got the advice to start newsletters, which helped to sort of build an email list, something that you talk about. But the other great thing is, I would say, and we'll talk about the parties, but it's easy to feel insignificant in this industry, not having the followers, not getting pitches answered, not having agents answer your emails. So I became determined to create a really, really fun party to just enjoy myself, because I found a lot of that part of the industry discouraging.
And Casey, you have also had a really interesting platform evolving over these past couple of years. How has your platform grown and evolved?
Yes, well, I'm going to second what Mimi had to say about social media. And I did work hard in the beginning to develop, especially on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it now, a good number of followers, only to have that really not mean much anymore, right? Because things have really changed on social media. So I'm really glad that I took to heart the advice that platform is not only social media. I think I'm glad that I have what I have, but I really, I'm kind of a relationship connector kind of person anyway. So I just tapped all the areas of my life now, that, everything from the people that I worked with to people I grew up with. But I also, because I'm an ambassador for the Family Heart Foundation and recently joined the board, the evolution for me has been seeing how those two things connect. And it wasn't extremely obvious in the beginning. I do talk about familial hypercholesterolemia in my book, but it's certainly not the topic of the whole book. And so, we can talk a little bit about that more, but over time, I found two really good ways to connect the two that make a lot of sense. And that opened up a lot of opportunities.
I love it. Now, after the stress of the publishing experience, you were both determined to create exciting, unique launch parties. Casey, your book, High Cholesterol Jewelry Store, how does it all fit together? Why did you launch your book at a jewelry store, and how'd that go?
Well, some of it was extremely pragmatic. So I had a book in conversation with Jesse Fine, a book talk at the small bookshop up in Cambridge, upstate New York, where my book is set. But I too just really wanted a party, and I didn't want a party that cost so much per person that I had to limit who came. I wanted to cast a wide net and, maybe beyond just my launch team and family and sell a few books, but I just really wanted to celebrate. And a good friend of mine, actually somebody who's in the book, mentioned that this is remarkable. There's a jewelry store in our area. They have a child who has a disability, and they have donated probably $4 or $5 million over the years. And the way that they do it is they have this gorgeous space available for free. The food is free. All the money, the drinks that are purchased go directly to the charity. And then you can have raffles and all those sorts of things. So this was like a really perfect way to blend, my advocacy work, but also here is a free venue and free food and everything else. And it's fine for it to also be your launch party. So it was really a gift.
How did you balance give money to charity and also please buy my book?
Yes.
Because that feels like a hard thing to go back and forth.
Well, it wasn't, because we had like a little mini health fair and people knew it was a Family Heart fundraiser, but all of the decorations were book related. It was definitely seemed like a launch party, and it's a great big space. And so I do have some photos that show like I'm here signing books, but right there is the health fair. And everyone just seemed it just seemed very natural. And I think it did work really well.
I
Thank
love that.
you.
And in a minute, we're going to see some pictures of it. Mimi, you climbed Mount Everest, which is freaking amazing. And so it totally made sense for you to launch at an outdoors store, REI. They sell hiking boots, they sell tents, they sell backpacks, they sell the kind of sleeping bags that you mush up into a tiny little space and it only weighs a pound and you can hike the Appalachian Trail with it. You also did a signing at the Kiehl's flagship store in New York City, which is a skincare brand. And may I say, your skin looks amazing. How did you make these particular connections?
Yeah, so I did not climb Everest. I was the doctor on an Everest team, just to be, and that was 37 years ago now. And I'm published by Falcon Guides, which is an adventure press. And I knew that they were distributed in REI stores. So the book would already be in an, or could be in an REI store. So I decided to approach, there are two here in Atlanta where I live. I chose the one with the biggest parking lot. I approached them. They were happy to do it, but what ended up being amazing is, you know, to Casey's point, you want a big space. Everything in REI is on wheels, so they can move everything around. They had chairs in stock. They had a sound system. They had a video screen if I wanted to use. I chose not to. They let me bring food and wine and beer in. And, then my mind raced with all kind of fun things. Like I can have like a station with props and people can take pictures. They had so much room. I invited a local author and we had an in conversation. I did some fun giveaways that we have a picture of. So again, I just really, really wanted it to be fun. And the way that Kiehl's got involved is there is a scene in my book where I tap danced on the mountain. It's not the cover picture, that's just me dancing. But in the tap dancing pictures, I'm wearing a Kiehl's ski bib because they were one of our expedition sponsors 37 years ago. So I contacted them. I thought, hey, maybe there's an opportunity here. And I didn't hear from them for 6 months. And then I contacted them again and somehow the ball got rolling. So that's another trick. Keep going. You're going to get like so many just unanswered emails. And for me, it's usually on the third try that someone answers. But finally they said, oh yeah, we're going to send you samples. Everyone got a free Kiehl's at my book party. And then they came up with this idea to have a signing at their New York store. They bought 100 books to be a giveaway. If for Earth Day, if someone bought refillable product, they would get a free book, and I was in the store signing. So that was a lot of fun.
I love that. And Mimi, I love what you said about you had to keep calling. Way back when I was in my first career as a professional fire eater, and before I started doing festivals and events, I was working in dance clubs. And I loved it. I opened for Hole. That was like one of my greatest moments there. And one of my friends was like, well, how do you get the gigs? And I'm like, well, you look up the club in the local alternative paper, because back then we still had local alternative papers, and then you call them. And they're like, oh, that's it? And I'm like, no, because then you get the answering machine and nobody calls you back. So you call again at a different time of day. And then you get the janitor and they finally tell you what time you can call that you might get somebody. And then you call, but they can't talk to you right now. So you call again a week and a half later. And it usually after like 9 or 10 calls, you finally get to give your information to somebody who can help you. And I also love too this idea, and Nina Boog-Lichtenstein mentions it in the chat, this idea of looking at partnering with spaces that make sense from a thematic point of view with the book. Because when you were talking about how REI rolls their racks away, well, I thought Nina's book is coming out soon. It's all about the body. It's all about like personal history through the female body, examining ourselves body part by body part. Well, you know who else does stores that have rolling racks and they have events in the morning? Lululemon. And I bet Nina could reach out to Lululemon and say, hey, I have some stuff that is all about body acceptance, all about body stuff. I would like to do it. So I think this is absolutely fabulous. You guys brought some amazing slides. Casey, will you show us some party pictures, because we would love to see what went down?
Absolutely. Let's see.
Awesome.
Let's see if the
And
technology works.
while Casey pulls up these slides, I also want to mention, if you have questions, please go ahead and drop them into the chat. We are very excited to take your questions, and we will be looking for those as we go. Casey, over to you.
Yes, so thank you, Casey, for controlling the slides. So the other cool thing about REI, they did not charge me a dime, and we did it at 6 o'clock on Sunday when the store closed, but they wanted it open to the public, so they advertised it on their website. And they kept staff in the store so people could shop during the book launch event. And they gave a pretty big discount to shoppers. So that was that. Next slide. These are just the giveaways. You see the Kiehl's thing, but then also I did trail mix and a little purple carabiner I had made that said Tap Dancing on Everest on it, which was fun. Next. So here was like the photo near the photo booth, and a friend had painted those tap shoes. That's the actual tap dancing picture. And you'll see some photos. Next. So here's what it looked like for people to put on a backpack in front of a tent and take pictures. And then the other kind of wacky fun thing I did is I dressed in the clothes that I'm wearing.
Cool.
Cover, tie-dyed tights, a purple thing, and mountain boots. Next. This just shows you how much room there is in an REI store to have food, lots of chairs. Again, they did everything gratis. So it was really nice of them. Next.
And Mimi, I'm going to interrupt for just 1 second.
Yeah.
What's in it for them? Why is it worth it to them to provide you with, hey, we're going to roll back all the racks. We are going to temporarily impede the flow of commerce in our store. We're going to put in a bunch of chairs. What makes it worth it for the venue?
So they said that business was down after COVID. So I think they were happy to get people in the store. I think we had about 75 people, and a lot of them shopped. They were happy to be in REI. So it was kind of a win-win, I think, I hope.
And I love this because it taps into something that we talk about a lot with platform, which is that you want to share audiences with other people. So like my career really started to rev up when I started working with Jane Friedman, because Jane has a much bigger audience than I do. Some of her audience became some of my audience. And it sounds like for you, Mimi, some of REI's audience became your audience, but you also brought people into their store, which reads as, hello, I am endorsing this place of business. Please come here and spend money. And that is so valuable to them.
Yeah, and every time you pitch something, you want to bring what is your value that you're bringing to this outlet, whatever it is, a podcast, right? Or, you want to give a talk somewhere. And it is, this is Writer's Bridge. It is all about bridging those things. We can talk more about that. But next, I'll just finish this. So this was in the Kiehl's store, and it was just a few weeks later, and they actually had in stock that original Everest bib that they had given us in 1988. Part of why I did go to Kiehl's is I noticed on their website that our expedition was still an important part of their history. They were a small mom and pop operation when they supported our team. So anyway, that was fun. Next, I think that's it. And I think we have pictures of Casey's party.
We do, but
awesome. And we are getting some great questions in the chat. Folks, I am marking them with the question icon so that I can make sure I can scroll back and find them. Casey, show us your launch pictures.
Before we go on, I'll say I don't think we mentioned that this Kiehl's event was in Manhattan. So the beautiful thing is Mimi had a great launch in Atlanta, and then also was able to bring it to Manhattan where she grew up, which I think is great. And I was at this party and it was fabulous. So I just had to say that. Very exciting for everyone.
Well, that's the other thing about partnerships. I'm going to interrupt you a second. Casey and I are not only Allison groupies, but in the same writing group, along with Karen DeBonis and Eileen Vorback Collins. So we've all supported each other through everything, which is a big partnership too.
Absolutely. So these may be a little out of order because here the focus is the Family Heart Foundation, but these are people who, some of them flew in or drove in from long distances to be part of the Family Heart portion of the evening. And this is the sort of health fair, but you can see we're in this beautiful jewelry store. And then just kind of on the other side of the store, very close by, is where I signed books. And I just chose this slide because you get kind of a picture of the whole store is much larger than this, but here I am with the books. This wall of love are all the charities that they've done this for, and everyone makes a tile and they display them. But then you see right over here is where on the right is where the whole Family Heart Foundation health fair and informational place happened. The thing that's quite different for this, and answering your question about what's in it for them, it's largely philanthropic. They're getting people into this beautiful store. Obviously, like the cases are the cocktail tables, so people are looking at jewelry the whole time they're there. But I think I know one of the owners has a disabled son, and they just have a big dedication to supporting charities, which because they paid for the food, which is just remarkable, I think. This is something they added. They have this charity bracelet or charity jewelry component. So this was another way they raised money. If you got something that had this little heart logo, half the money went to the charities. So that's another way that happened. And then this is the last slide I have. This is our writing group, and it's just emblematic of what Mimi just said. And we have a similar picture at her launch. So I just think maybe part of the partnership thing we're talking about is partnerships with other writers, and how neither of these parties would have felt as fun and exciting if we hadn't had people that had been through the whole journey with us along the way. So oh no, I think I do have one more slide. This is just, as you can see, people can browse the jewelry, but this pink framed item in particular was advertising my In Conversation a couple of nights later. So that was another way to integrate all the events, because this was not a book talk. This was a party. So mine were kind of two separate events.
I love that. And I want to jump in too, because Jillian mentions in the chat, I have so much anxiety about this. I once gave a party and no one came. And I want to say part of it is know your audience. So Casey knew that people would turn out for this charity as well as for her personally. Mimi knew that people would turn out for REI as well as for her personally. For me, I live in Dubai, which is 9 hours ahead of Eastern time. I have friends all over the world. So I was like, I got to have this online. My book launch was virtual. I held it online for an hour. After an hour, some people stayed and chatted informally. I had a friend be the person to introduce me and ask me questions and invite me to read from my book, so that I didn't have to be the host as well as the guest of honor. And that was really, really helpful. And then it also was a great little video to put on my Instagram, and lots of people have watched it ever since. Casey, Mimi, how did you know that you could get people to show up?
Well, someone in this community wrote a piece recently about, one of the perks of being an older writer. I don't remember who that was, but the nice thing about being older is we've had a lifetime of making connections, partnerships, friends, careers that you can now all draw from. So I think that's a plus. And to me, again, I just wanted a big party. So I invited all my friends.
Casey, what about you?
Well, I'd say mine all began with my relentless march to have a big launch team. And so when you do have a large launch team, I did go through, I don't have a percentage, but it was interesting to me what percentage were writers, what percentage were people I knew in real life that didn't live here. So I had to boil these invitations down to the people that live nearby. But then I could go beyond the launch team to friends who had, it was just this long process. And this party did have an RSVP component, so that was helpful in planning. But I'll say there were 3 events last week. I had that book talk and I had this, and then our group presented a panel on being an older writer and supporting each other to book publication. And I think we would say that all of those events, we were very happy with the turnout. Pleasantly surprised. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. So both of you have used the words launch team, and Jillian in the chat has brilliantly anticipated my next question, which is, what is a launch team? Why do we need one? And how do we make a launch team happen?
Do you want to go first, Ned?
Well, Casey really took launch. We all in our writer group, we have 4 books. Casey's was the last one. She really took that concept to the next level. So I'm going to let her answer that.
Well, one of the beauties of being the last person, of course, is you learn from everyone else. But I'm a big saver, and and probably some of this advice comes from you, Allison, but I have saved people's launch team requests and their updates and their letters and taken what I liked and then made up my own. But back to what is a launch team, right? It's people from not just writers, you definitely don't want just writers, but people from all areas of your life who agree. In my case, I asked them to read a digital ARC, a digital advanced reader's copy, write a Goodreads review. Every launch team letter, I linked to your piece in Brevity blog about the importance of reviews and how easy they are. Yes, you got a lot of press. And I said, and not everyone does this, if you agree to be on the launch team, you agree to be on my mailing list. So I got a lot of new subscribers. And I also said I would ask that you pre-order the book. So I, to my great surprise, ended up with 270 people on my launch team. And, not everyone, not even half of everyone is going to write that review or do what you want. But if there are other ways to support writers too. So I've had people on the launch team set up events in the Adirondacks and just do all kinds of wonderful things. So that's what a launch team is. And yeah, I don't know what else. I think the other piece of advice I have though is, you put together that letter or those updates, but I very briefly, just like a little bit in the first paragraph, I personalized every one of those invitations because nobody wants to feel spammed and they want to feel like they want to support you because you have a relationship. And the other thing I did was be very strong about the fact that it was completely fine to say no, that we all have times that that's just not a right time for us or for whatever reason.
And I did
Nina
that too.
asks
I'm sorry?
I'm going to, one sec, Mimi. Casey, Nina asks incredulously in the chat, you personalized 250 emails?
Well, yeah, but it's just like a couple of lines. It really was, I don't know. I guess when I was personalizing them, I wasn't thinking I was going to be sending probably 300 emails, right? I just did a bunch at a time and then I was really surprised at who said yes. And then I just kept adding.
Yeah. Mimi?
No, I did that too. I personalized every email, but my team was about 100. And, this was last year. Although Casey and I, even before I started working on language together. But yes, I did that too. I personalized them.
And I want to say launch team sounds super formal. It sounds like we're going to all have meetings and we're going to get t-shirts and a mom is going to come out with a tray of orange slices at the end. But it doesn't really have to be that coordinated. There will be some people on your team who are super helpful, and they're like, let me invite people to your event, and let me make sure I review your book on the first day, and let me make sure that I send to 6 other people, hey, you should buy this book. And there's going to be people where all they do is tell 2 friends, hey, you're really going to love this book about Everest because you're also a person who is intrepid and moving into the world in cool new ways. So it's not necessarily as much coordination as it sounds like. I want to suggest something specific too. Just as Casey said, make it okay to say no. And me personally, I will very often contact people and say, hey, no is an okay answer, but will you? But also ask them for something specific. Because, hey, I've got a book and it's coming out in a while, and it would be really helpful if maybe you could think about perhaps considering writing a review, possibly maybe one day. That is not an actionable request. But hey, I'm so glad that you've always been so positive about my book. It's coming out next Thursday. Here is the Amazon link. If you have a moment, will you click through, click 5 stars, and say one thing you liked about it? Because a lot of people feel like, oh no, I have to write a review. I have to thoroughly read the book and make highlights and post-it notes and to make careful notes. It's like, no. And that goes to all of you out here tonight too. Your friend wants your review up on Amazon right now a lot more than they want your careful, considered 5 paragraphs of feedback. You want to click that 5-star button, maybe that 4-star button, or don't review it at all. If you dislike them and you're never going to need a favor from them, go ahead and click that 1 star and tell people specifically what you didn't like about it, because that also helps people. Don't bother to give 3 stars because nobody wants to hear meh. So, Casey, Mimi, anything else you want to add about Launch Team? And then we're going to dive into some questions from the chat.
I don't think so. Only that for me, I was I mean, I've been listening and learning all these years, Allison. So a lot of those things are that I remembered from you saying are things that I did. And I had a very like clear bulleted list. They always seem to get a little longer than I wanted, and shorter is better. But there will be people who don't read the ARC, who don't write a review, who don't do any of that. And when they see you, they're like, oh, well, I don't have the book. It doesn't matter. Like, you give them things to do. You don't tell them how they haven't followed directions. You're just thrilled that they buy your book when it comes out.
Exactly. And I also find it's useful to give people 2 to 3 tasks to choose from, not more than 3, or they'll be overwhelmed and they won't choose anything, but give them something that's super, super easy. Like, will you please forward this email to one friend who you think will like this book? All it takes is 1 click. Or will you write a review? Or will you let me know if you're interested in being a part of my launch team, and I'll give you some more stuff to do, so that people have simple options to opt into. How far in advance did you start gathering your launch teams? Mimi?
I think I wrote my launch team in December and my book came out in April. So that's when I started, when I wrote my first email to the launch team.
Casey, how about you?
Well, I think this is right. I think I started actually like in late May writing people for a February launch, which was quite early. But it shocked me also how long it took to assemble that launch team, because people didn't answer. I'd sent to the, so I really didn't have it all set probably till July, which, about the same amount of time. But people kept saying about all the launch related things, oh, you've got time. But if you think, oh, you've got time for everything, and suddenly it's a month away, you're going to be really sorry. And I just felt it was calming to me to kind of start working on it early.
I love that. We have Jessica Waite with us here today. Hey, Jessica, will you unmute yourself? So one of the things I saw on Facebook about 3 or 4 months ago that was connected to Jessica's book, The Widow's Guide to Dead Bastards, which is an awesome book. Jessica met with, Jessica, was it a bookstore? Was it an art store? You invited people and you all made bookmarks. Tell us what the event was.
Yeah, so this is in the same vein as what Mimi and Casey have done, where so my sister-in-law and a good friend are both like big paper crafters, and they were at a place called Paper and Ink Boutique all the time, and they did classes there. And so they actually approached them on my behalf to have this bookmark making party. And so a bunch of my friends, people, and then their group came, and we made bookmarks to give away at my launch. And I didn't know at the time, but that they have on their mailing list like 5,000 paper crafters who that some of them sent in bookmarks that they made, and it was really fun. And it was so special at the launch to be able to give these handmade things away. And yeah, it was just lovely.
And what I loved about it was that this event worked on so many levels. Number one, it tapped into another audience that Jessica didn't already have, who were glad to get to know her. Number two, it created a tangible thing like the jewelry that was sold at Casey's launch. So, and like the photos that Mimi set up so that people could take photos with different props, so that people then go away with something specific that they can show and share with other people. Number three, it created beautiful social media content. Like these bookmarks were gorgeous. It was fun to look through and go, oh, look at all these pretty pictures. And that also gave other people something to put on their social media as well. And this kind of ties into another question that we've got in the chat. Was there anything else that you printed, that you made? How much do the giant posters cost? What kind of things come to your launch?
Well, I printed photos from our expedition and put them in acrylic things to put as placeholders because my book has no photos and I didn't want to do a screen at the event. And then I also made special bookmarks. On the back, I put QR codes to leave reviews, Amazon, Goodreads, and Barnes & Noble, but I don't think I would do that again. I don't think that really led to reviews. So I've now made a new kind of bookmark with some of the awards the book has on the back. But I think for printing, that was it.
Well, and the retractable banner, which we both have, the pull-up banners, you got one of
How
those.
much was it?
One something. I'll have to look up Vistaprint.
At
And then I
Vistaprint.
also have the big,
Are we looking at 100 or 1,000?
no,
100.
100 something. I could find it, but 140, maybe 130, something like that. And then behind me, you see the big foam board cut out. So I have a tripod that goes on. And that felt a little, I wasn't going to get the retractable banner. So this was going to be it. And then right at the last minute, the venue was like, they work really well. And I'm actually glad I have both of them. And it's not, my mantra was, I'm not paying for this party. So I'm going to get all the things. And bookmarks, we have bookmarks. I ended up buying like a dozen of these white frames that were in the pictures that I showed, just because there were so many things to put up, whether it was the price list for the books or the QR codes for, for Venmo. And there were so many things. And I did do a lot of work integrating the hard stuff and the book stuff, including, I didn't show my favors, but they were, my philosophy is nobody needs another pen. So I had like my book business card, but my board of directors business card, and it's National Random Acts of Kindness Month in addition to Heart Month. So I put some like acts of kindness little cards from Don't Give Up cards, and there was a pin from the foundation, and there were kisses, Hershey's Kisses that matched the book. It was kind of a mishmash, but I looked at buying things, and I think we're all overdosed on things to throw in our junk drawer.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, did either one of you have a publicist? You both published with traditional publishers. Casey, your publisher, Diane Windsor of Motino Books, is also here with us tonight and has been a past guest on the Writer's Bridge. Do you guys have publicists?
Well, I did just recently hire someone at an extremely reasonable cost, not for, we all know this, the difference between marketing and publicity, and I made marketing my full-time.
We don't all know the difference between marketing and publicity. Tell us what it is.
So in my understanding, marketing are all the kinds of things I've done with, promoting things on social media and getting local in-person events and, all that list of things. But a publicist can make connections that I can't make. To me, that would be why I would spend money on a publicist. And I certainly don't, I wasn't going to spend $10,000 or $5,000 a month for 6 months or anything like that. But this person kind of fell in my lap. She's like an in-law relative of relatives. And I have not paid her very much, but she wrote my press release and pitched the local TV stations, all based on the health component of my fundraiser and it being Heart Month. And at 4:45 this morning, I did 4 spots on TV, and I would not have gotten those without her, I don't believe. So I guess the short answer to that is I've used a publicist, but extremely sparingly.
And I want to note too, when Casey says she was on TV, notice the cover of her book is located conveniently behind her head. Notice when you look at Mimi, the cover of her book is located conveniently behind her head. Find every opportunity you can to just keep your book in people's vision. Yeah. Mimi, did you hire a publicist?
I did for the months before, just a couple months before book launch, hoping that they would have ins that I wouldn't. That was part of the disappointing thing. I didn't really get much traction, which is what was part of this whole feeling like, stop being disappointed, throw yourself a big party. But I'm here to say, since then, I've had incredible opportunities just keep coming in very strange and unusual ways. So it doesn't all have to be set up before your book comes out. Even just this week, here is another kind of partnership weird thing. I have a friend who read the book, and he's a watch collector and a blogger. And he was obsessed with a story in my book about a Rolex watch. And he really wanted Rolex to know about it. Now, he had that idea last June, and this week, a big watch site is doing a profile on me with a photo shoot with the watch, and stuff like that keeps happening. So I was disappointed in the beginning, and now I see that it's not time limited to just your launch week. And, you just have to be open to everything. Because I've also seen that question in some of our groups, like, do you go to all these book talks? You're not getting paid for that time. And my philosophy has been, I have said yes to everything. And you just don't know what happens. One person comes to one book talk, and then all of a sudden you're invited to this whole other big thing. So that's been my philosophy.
I love that. I love that. And that's always been my policy as well. Show up for everything. For me, I have now gotten to a stage in my career where I will teach for free or for cheap if it is for an audience that is new to me. And then I want to make sure that I can get their emails at the end. So for a book event, you might have that QR code where you mention a couple of times, hey, everybody, scan this QR code and get on my subscription list. And if you can give away an ethical bribe, that is very, very helpful. For me, I teach webinars. I say, hey, scan this QR code. You're going to get the slides right away, and you'll also get the bonus workbook. Did either of you use a bribe to get people either to show up or to sign up for anything?
Not really. Oh, go ahead, Casey.
I'm thinking, like, are we thinking along the lines of content magnets? Not necessarily a bribe to show up at the party, but I had a pre-order form. I had a pre-order page on my website with a jot form, and if people filled it out, they would get, so my pre-order bonuses were a document that I had put together a long while ago, 5 ways to support those who grieve, a very long Spotify playlist because I'm a music fanatic and it goes right along with my book, but also the link to the launch day Zoom celebration. And the only people that got that link were the people who pre-ordered and filled out the jot form. So that was my bribe.
That's true. I forgot that I had something like that too. If they pre-ordered the book, they would come to a Zoom gathering of my climbing team. So all the big mountaineers that, you know, we're still in touch with. And so we did a little party like that. In terms of sign up for newsletter, though, that's been great since, because I do bring that to every book event. So I am gaining more subscribers. And in terms of like my comfort level, I'm not so comfortable making my newsletter all about writing, because that hasn't been my whole life. So I make it about medical news. You know, it's called Medicine Mountains More. So it's medical news. Mountains is inspiration from art and nature. And the more is like my writing events or essays that are published. So that was like my comfort zone.
I love that. Did either of you do a Goodreads giveaway or a BookBub deal? And for people who have not heard of this before, the website Goodreads, which is a big review site, which is owned by Amazon, they offer a giveaway thing where you can share your book and offer it to people for free, and then they review you. BookBub is a site that I recommend to everybody, actually. It's where I get most of my inexpensive ebooks. They send out ebook deals once a week as a newsletter, and you can pay for placement in a BookBub newsletter. Did either of you do anything like that?
I had a binder, write to me and tell me she didn't feel like the Goodreads giveaway had been that helpful. That was just her advice. We didn't do that. The book was on NetGalley for a week, so that's another place where people can read the book and review. Does the BookBub deal, do they happen after the books are released? That's not a pre.
Yes.
Yeah, so I haven't gotten.
And they often do it for books that are 15, 20, 30 years old, like George Orwell's 1984 came through the other day. It's something to make people buy a bunch of copies on the same day so that it goes up in the Amazon rankings.
Get the BookBub emails, and I've bought books through there before, and some from some big writers, but that isn't anything I had considered.
And this brings us to Tanya's question, because Mimi, you were talking about no time limit. You're still going, even though your book came out last year. What advice do you have for someone who completely missed their book launch window? Some of us get sick, we have family crises. What can you do after that initial excitement of, hey, my book is out?
Such a good question, because really, I got almost nothing placed or done before my book came out. I had not one review in place, and I thought, well, that's it. Nothing. Who will want to review it after it comes out? But I've had several come out after. I don't think there is such a strict expiration date for that. You know, I have this whole bucket of readers who are medical people, because I was a medical student in the book when I served as the doctor on Everest. I haven't even tapped into that. I finally started pitching that. Now I'm going to speak to 2 medical students in the next month or 2. I, have a whole world of reproductive rights advocacy that I do. And I'm connecting that to the book, because I say in the book that I found my voice on the mountain and have been determined ever since to use it for other women's right to self-determination. So it's a way for me to combine those 2 ways to speak. Of course, nowadays, there's a need for that. Here's another partnership I forgot about. I have a contraceptive book. I've been working on 17 editions, not getting paid, just because I believe in the mission. But that publisher has now stocked my book. He's a book distributor. We do things together. I have asked him to support my website and some of the things that cost me money. So I just feel like it doesn't matter if you missed your book launch, or you could do an anniversary book launch. I don't know how far out you are, but I was surprised to learn that it's not like a finite time.
Every year on the anniversary of my publication, I reshare all the nice things that people said about 7 Drafts when it first came out, and I screenshot every single one of those posts, and I Facebook saved them, and I Instagram saved them, and I post them again. Happy book birthday to me. Thank you again for supporting me when this first came out. remember too that especially with sharing things on social media, 90% of your people don't see 90% of what you post. You are not wearing out your welcome when you post more than one thing. I want to get to a really nice question from Andy. You have both mentioned that you've been part of a writers group for some years now. How did your writers group get started, and how do you support each other?
We got started in Allison's Facebook group when someone posted about a question about writing groups. And in the comment thread, it was like, does anyone want to start a new writing group? And a bunch of us, decided to have a Zoom. We are now 4 people. We started just when the pandemic started in the spring of 2020. So we're going on 5 years. We had a couple of other people who dropped out. The 4 of us have been together for a long time. 3 of us were in that original group that started spring of 2020. And we all say our books would not be anywhere near as good as they are without intense editing by our friends in this group. We all went through each other's books twice, each chapter twice. Casey, you want to?
Well, I'm just laughing because this is what we just did on Thursday. All 4 of us are rarely together, and we were able to present a panel on how for 60 plus women writers, how we supported each other to traditional book contracts. And so we talked about the tenets, like we all say when we write, you don't know what you think until you write it down. So we kind of reverse engineered what were the tenets that made this group work. And I don't know if I remember all of them. I think it's generosity and trust and respect and compassion. Is that it?
No, respect and commitment.
Commitment. There we go. There was a C in there. And those really are true. Those really are, I think what made the writing group work so well. Commitment. We definitely, some groups it's, well, I can't meet. Like we met faithfully every 2 weeks for a very
It's our
long
very first meeting. We have met every 2 weeks. If someone's on vacation, we'll change the date, but twice a month for 5 years.
I'll just say one more thing. We're called Writers' Tears. It was originally rather, after the Irish whiskey, but we say now that we're Writers' Tears because each of us left a meeting at least once in tears. That's what happens.
And I love this because this is one of our fundamental principles of the Writer's Bridge, something we have always said, which is that long before your book comes out, we all need to be making deposits into the bank of goodwill. We need to be reviewing other people's books. We need to be helping other writers with their work. We need to be promoting other writers in whatever ways we are able to contribute, because that way we can feel good and confident when it's time for us to make withdrawals, when it's time for us to start asking for favors. Well, great, I need a beta reader for my book. And fortunately, I read 6 other people's book during the time that I was writing my book. So now it's my time to ask for favors in return. And the more we give, the more confident we can feel about taking when it's our turn to take. And we are allowed to ask for these things. In just a moment, I am going to ask our lovely guests for our top tips on what you can do today to start working towards a successful book launch in your future. I want to remind you all that we have a Craft Talks webinar coming up with me in a couple of weeks, Flash Draft Your Book, which will be a fun workshop that actually has writing time in the middle and some live editing. We also have 5 cabins left on the Queen Mary II crossing, the craft and publishing transatlantic voyage. I also want to mention, and you'll see this in your email, there is a surprise bonus writer's bridge that is coming up March 13th. It is a Thursday instead of a Tuesday. And the reason we're doing it is because a lot of people are talking about whether or not they want to try and live abroad for a wide variety of reasons. And so myself, Joj, who lives in France, I've lived in the United Arab Emirates for 12 years and I'm moving to Portugal. Aaliyah Voles moved to Portugal and brought her mother with her, who is 80 some years old and is discovering a new lease on life in a new place. Joj has lived in France for quite some time now with 4 kids, so she'll be able to speak to that. And we'll also have Deborah Williams, who taught at NYU Abu Dhabi for 15 years, is now back in New York City teaching at NYU New York, and she's going to tell us what that change has been like. We will answer all of both your mindset questions and your practical, how the heck do I get a visa? How do I pick a country? That kind of thing. That's going to be March 13th, and we will send you an email about it as well. As we close tonight, Mimi, what is your top tip as people prepare for their book launch in the future, or as they resuscitate their book after the launch has long passed?
Well, I do agree with your advice and so many other people who say it's good to have your own email list, because that's what I drew from, for the launch team. So starting a newsletter, even though you can feel in the beginning like nobody's reading it and why would they want to, and find something that speaks to you, like I did, the medical news, inspiration for modern nature. Like I had to make it feel authentic, not like I'm just another person with a newsletter. So even though mine might be a little quirky. And I also just want to say, because I did say I got depressed before my book launch. I wasn't feeling like there was traction. And one of my messages is getting outdoors. So get outdoors, take a deep breath. It's all going to be okay, and get some fresh air, because I think that that's very healing. And I'm going to throw my newsletter in the chat.
Yes, please do. And please do sign up for these ladies' newsletters. Casey, what is your #1 top tip?
Well, first I want to say quickly that Mimi's newsletter is fabulous, and I don't know if this is a rule of thumb, but I felt really strongly that my newsletter needed to offer something of value beyond look at all my writing and look at what I did. And so, I write a lot about grief, but I felt I'd seen a lot of newsletters years ago anyway that were just, here's my writing news. And I don't really feel like, people get tired of that. I think they need a little value. For me, I would say when I was developing my launch team, I felt very strongly that I couldn't ask someone who had a book out to support me if I hadn't supported them. So there are lots of binders, or maybe people, in your life in other ways, who have books, and maybe you were busy and you didn't read them, but I read and reviewed a lot of books during this period of time. And that's something you can start now doing, and you'll read some really wonderful books too. Yeah.
I want to tell you all my quick and dirty tip for leaving easy book reviews for your friends and the people that you love and want to compliment. So one of the great things about reviewing people's books after your book is already out is when they see your review, because yes, a lot of us check our reviews on a relatively regular basis. They go, oh crap, I meant to review that person and I forgot. And it jogs their mind to review you. So if you need to review somebody, and it is always better to review fast than to review thoroughly, you read the description of the book, you read the sample pages on Amazon, you read the top 3 positive reviews and the top 3 negative reviews, and you write your review based on what you liked about the sample pages, and if you feel positive vibes from any of the reviews that other people wrote. Reviews are not a genuine expression of your literary acumen. They are helping your friends sell books. And by being quick and specific, you are also helping people know, is this the kind of book they want to buy? So leave those reviews, leave them quickly, and that will help people remember to come back and review your book as well. I want to thank you both so much for being here tonight. Remember, everybody, you can see all of the past Writers Bridge episodes on YouTube. We hope you'll subscribe. It is at the Writers Bridge. I'll stick around for a couple more minutes in case anybody has any more questions. Casey and Mimi, you are 2 of my favorite writers in the whole world, and I am thrilled to bits to see your writing in the world where more people can love and appreciate it the way I do. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We love you, Allison. Thank you.
I love you too. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Oh, the
Feel free to
literary
unmute yourself
hugs.
for a
I
joyful
love it.
goodbye. Yay, thank you for being here.
Yay.
you.
That was
Bye.
awesome.
That was amazing.
Really
Yeah.
wonderful.
Nice to see your faces. It's so fun.
You
Thank
guys
you,
are so
thank you, thank
awesome.
you.
How do I unpin myself?
Thank you all so much. I'm sorry I'm in my pajamas, so I'm staying off camera. I'm in Los
That's
Angeles.
okay. We once had
Stop.
somebody change her top in the middle of a Writer's Bridge episode without realizing she was on camera. And I had to go into YouTube and do a last minute edit to remove that.
Oh,
Oh my gosh.
there's no modesty anymore.
See you all soon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here today. Does anybody have any extra questions while you are still here? Hey, and Allison Lane, you guys got to check out Allison Lane's website. She has great ideas about promotion. Nina, you've got a book coming out soon and you've got a question. What's your question?
I have a question for both Mimi and Casey, which is when you hired a publicist, is it relevant? Do you think that the person lives in your community or can it be someone from anywhere?
I think it can be someone from anywhere. Everything is done, the person I'm using lives in Annapolis, but
Mhm.
she, she's a TV producer. She's got a lot of experience and she has a lot of resources that not all of us have. Like she pays a lot of money for a database of every podcast and what the listenership is like. So there, I don't think being local really makes a difference. What do you think, Mimi?
I agree, 100%.
All right.
You don't want local, you want connected. They don't need to be connected to you. They need to be connected to other people who you're not connected to.
Right. And before Nina goes, I have to make one correction. I am not the founding editor. I am a founding editor of In a Flash. There are 5 of us, and I have to give credit. Nina is one. So
Fantastic. Rebecca, what's your question?
This is kind of specific, but when people say, "Oh, I'd love to have a book party for you when your book comes out," whether they are in cities I don't live in, friends of mine, like you were saying, it's so true. Work friends, old friends, new friends, people. And then they ask me like, how, what should it look like? Or do you need to have a bookstore? Oh, that's people have been asking me. Are you going to do it at a bookstore? Or do you want to come after? I have no idea. How's that work? Have you guys done that with friends that throw you book parties or like at people's houses? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
they
so
wanna have a party.
Yes.
what's happened for me is my party was here in Atlanta with the launch.
Mhm.
If I went to LA last year for a wedding, and so someone within the writing community offered to do an in conversation at her house. So
Right.
yeah, she had food. I wouldn't call it, I guess you could call it a party, but the point was I would call it more a book event with
Book
food
event,
and an
okay.
in conversation, and those
Okay.
can be anywhere. I have, it may be different for you. Again, because I was a little late, I didn't get into many bookstores. I had a few, but I find being in homes almost better because bookstores want to guarantee they're going to sell books, and friends can really invite anyone to their house. They're going to get a bigger crowd, and you can just sell books at the house. So bookstores have like a certain cachet, but I don't think it has to be in a bookstore.
Okay. And then do you take the books with you and stuff like that, right?
Unfortunately, yes. Then you
Yeah,
schlep.
that's what I
I have a whole way of packing the books and schlepping them, and
Right.
I have little
Yeah.
things that I pack them in, and you feel
Oh,
like a
interesting.
little
Yeah.
sad, like schlepping your books, but it's fine.
I would say I'm just going to hop in here. If you're lucky enough to have someone host a book party for you, I would, when you invite someone to a party, sometimes they arrive late, or maybe they decide they're not going to get out of their PJs, or they don't want to put a bra on to leave the house right then. But if you charge, because the book is part of the experience, they show up.
Oh,
And it's
interesting.
not a high price. They're coming out for an evening of entertainment. They could certainly pay for the book. And that way, that the books that you're bringing you are selling. And that way, you know that you don't have to be the one running the stripe thing, like everyone gets the
Interesting.
book when they arrive. Good for them.
Interesting.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I have to say too, if I was doing a party where people either bought the book to come, or maybe they got books in a gift bag because I knew my friend had money and I said, hey, I want you to buy 50 copies of this book. Let's put together some fun gift bags for everybody. I would then also stand up after the reading or whatever part of it is me talking and go, now some of you are going to love this book. Some of you are going to hate it. So I want you to know that if you love this book, please share it with a friend you really like. And if you hate this book, please give it to someone you don't like, and then we both. So recognize that your stuff's not going to be for everybody, because people appreciate that.
For
Eileen
sure.
has
For
a
me.
really powerful book that is also somewhat depressing. I mean, ultimately it's joyful, Eileen. You find acceptance, you find a place of peace. But Eileen, a lot about your book is pretty sad, right?
Which is why I couldn't bring myself to have a party. But Casey's book is also sad, but she made this party so wonderful. That's why I'm still hanging out here, because I need more of them. I can't, I just spent the whole weekend up there. And
We had a big sleepover party together.
yeah.
So sweet.
And what you could do, Eileen, is you could have a party where you say, hey, everybody, my book is all about sadness and grief. And what we're going to do is we are going to have a little ritual at this party where we each write down something that we are grieving about, and we share it into the middle of the circle, and we set them all on fire and read affirming poems to each other, or, something that speaks to your group. If you can't hide it, hang bells on it.
I love it. Thank you, Allison.
That phrase. That's great.
That's great advice. But also, I just want to say, for people who haven't read Eileen's book, it also has humor in it, because that's Eileen, and it's brilliant that she's able to do that.
It's true. Yeah.
And people often say, not often, a couple of people have said to me, and my book's not coming out for a while, that, oh, would you come to my book club, even though there's only 12 of us? It's like, of course I would, but people think, oh, if you have a book out, you must want 100 people or something. That's probably not true. I don't know any of this, but I'm guessing anyone would go anywhere. I tell people I'll zoom into any city in the world. I'll do it.
Yeah, if you're zooming in, it's no skin off your back. They could be of course you want the biggest crowd you can get, but you don't know who's going to show up. I zoomed into one that was so small, but so what? I had fun talking about my book for an hour, I just feel like saying yes to everything.
A mass audience is a whole bunch of individual connections. Sorry, go ahead, Casey.
I was about to say, that's what you have said for a long time. What's in my head is you're building platform, or you're building whatever, one relationship at a time, and you never know which one relationship is going to open up all these other doors. So
true.
I don't think the numbers matter.
Yeah, for example, I did one book Zoom, but someone there then invited me to a group that has thousands of people in it. Not that many showed up to that, but you never know who's that one person who's going to be in your book Zoom.
It's like my mother used to say about dating: always go out with a boy once if he asks you. He might have a nice friend.
Oh, that's perfect.
Thank you all so much for being here today. I hope that we'll see some of you March 13th for our very special bridge called Getting Out. Writers tell you what you need to know about living abroad.
Well,
for those of you who are considering getting out, feel free to unmute yourselves for a joyful goodbye. Thank you so much for being here. Catch us on YouTube.
Bye.
Rebecca.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Brilliant gathering.
Bye. I'm sorry I missed the beginning.
All good.
I had a client, but I love you guys so much.
That was awesome. That was so joyful and beautiful. And I'm thrilled that I have all your books.